Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Paul, and today we're going to be looking at something which I think is actually quite cool. This is the Ionz Pro Gamer Edition. It's a mini ATX case from a company I've never heard of before. Ionz. I think that's right, Ionz. And it's a very portable case, and you'll see why later on. But first, let's open the box and dive in. Okay, let's start by giving you the unboxing experience. Now, I have to be honest with you, I have taken this out of the box already, and well, we just wanted to have a look at it, didn't we? You know, it's something different. This is the case. Let's get this packaging off. I think it's actually very well packaged for the price, which we will get to later on. Let's take this off, and here we go. Let's lift that up. I think you'll be amazed at the quality of this thing given its price. All right, so this is the entire case. Let's just show you around the entirety of the case, and we'll go through it in a bit more in depth or a bit more detail. Here we go. This is pretty much it. It looks like a well ventilated case from my first impressions here, and actually really good quality. Like I said, from a manufacturer I've never heard of before. Okay, so as usual with our cases, we're gonna go through the outside of the case. There's really not much to look at on this case. It's actually very basic case. And then we'll move on to the inside. Okay, so on the front, you can see we've got a mesh panel here. We'll have a look on the inside when we get to the inside. But you've got obviously the power button, a USB 3.0 port, headphone microphone jack there, and one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine on most cases is that they don't have USB-C, especially cheaper cases. This one does have USB-C, which is really good to see. So if you've got a phone or something, or a tablet or whatever, you can plug that in and it will charge it. That is really good to see. I'm very impressed by that. Okay, moving on to the Windows side now. We're gonna angle that a little bit so the camera person isn't in shot there. Actually tempered glass, not Perspex, which you find on cheaper cases. This is actually tempered glass. I'm not entirely sure how thick this tempered glass is. Normally it's 4 millimeters thick on tempered glass, but I don't know. It doesn't say it in any of the pamphlets or leaflets or anything like that, or even on the box that it comes with. You can see we've got the protective cover on the inside. We will remove that when we build into it. Now, around the edge of the glass side panel, you can see there's probably a couple of inches of gap all around the entirety of the case, but it gives you a good view of your components inside of the case. Obviously, there's nothing in it right now, so you're not going to see anything, but that will come later on. Now, let's move on to the back of the case. Now, as we look at the top, we'll start at the top of the case and work our way down. You might notice the power connector, the what we call in the UK, the kettle lead or kettle lead connector, is actually built into the case, and you'll see where that goes and where the power supply is going to go a little bit later on. Obviously, you've got the slot there, or the spacer there, for the I/O shield of your motherboard, and you've got a space for a 120mm fan. Whatever type of fan you want to put in there is entirely up to you. As we move on down, we've got an extra little bit of spacer there for some kind of port. I don't know what you would put on that, but possibly it looks like a VGA port or something like that sort of size, but I guess you could put whatever you want in there if you wanted to do that. So it's good it's got that little bit in there. You've got 4 PCIe slots available here. Don't forget this is micro ATX there, so you only get the 4 slots as standard, which is actually, for the size of the case, is actually really good. So that's all secured on by this little bracket here, which you can take off, and then you've got easy access to the 4 screws which hold on these removable, and you can put them back on as well, the covers. Now, on a lot of cheap cases, this is not a thing. They just have little snap off things that you can never put back on again. So it's really good to see that they've actually put a bit of thought into this, and the fact that you can just put these back on if you need to put them back on, which is really cool. Okay, so I had a little bit of issue putting this back on, but I've just noticed, if we can just zoom in on there, there's little holes at the top and the bottom of this. I didn't realize, but that actually just clips on. If I can just hopefully show you, it clips on to these little slots here. So it actually just swings back. So it doesn't even need to come off. You can just leave it like that, which is another nice little touch for a very reasonably priced case. Actually, that's impressive. I like that. Okay, let's screw that back on and move on to this side. There's really not much to see on this side. It is just a sheet of metal. So let's move on to the inside of the case. Okay, moving on to the inside of the case now, we've got this special area here. This whole section comes off. Well, I'll just show you how that works. You've got 3 screws, thumb screws. They're not captive as far as I remember. They just come off. So put those somewhere safe. So we'll unscrew those. And you may have already noticed that there is indeed a handle on the top. If we can just show that handle on camera there a moment. This is what makes it super portable. Now, I'm not going to lift it because I've just unscrewed it. But you can see here, that looks like actually a good quality handle, and it's quite flexible as well. So you can get a good, if you've got big hands, for example, you can get your hands under there and properly lift that up. And that's actually really good. These seem really, really solid. They don't move at all. And we'll look at how they're held on. Oh, it's got a bit of a finger mark there, unfortunately. So yeah, bear in mind, finger grease with the silver there is a problem. But anyway, that aside, let's take off the side panel and show you that. So this is how the side panel comes off. And as you can see, it's quite a big chunky thing, but it does look very, very well built, I'll be honest. You've got does look like 4mm thick tempered glass there, so that is good to see. It looks like it's actually stuck on, so hopefully that doesn't come loose. And then the handle we've got there, if we can just zoom in on the screws that are holding the handle on, we've got 2 screws there for each handle, giving plenty of support to lift the case when you've got your components inside. So inside the case, you can see what I was talking about earlier. You've got the kettle lead connector there that actually routes through to the front of the case. And this is where that cable leads. And this will plug into your power supply. Now, it does take a full ATX power supply, and I'll put the sizes on the screen at the bottom now. But that is what this section here is for. You physically mount your PSU to this, down this area here, and then plug that in, which is why we've got a right angled connector there so that it doesn't protrude out of the top, or at least I'm hoping that's the case, because it's quite tight in the top, I'm going to be honest with you. So on this PSU bracket here, you would mount it, I think, with the power connectors facing up and the leads facing down. You've got 3 holes here. One is accessible through the case mounting holes there, and then you can plug that into your power connector, but we'll see how that actually works a bit later on when we build into it in a separate video. Inside, you can see that we've already got some bits ready for when we build into this. Now, we've actually got some easy DIY case fans, which obviously are not part of this case. These came from another build, but we are going to be using those. They also need a bit of a clean, so let's just move those out of the way. This is basically what you get inside the case. You get a pack of bits here. Now, if I can just pull that off, I haven't actually looked in here, so I don't know what's in here. You get some, let's just quickly look at these. You get some 3M stickered, I guess this is some kind of cable management. Looks like a cable tie type of thing. So I think that's what they are. You can stick those to the case somewhere, because don't forget, all the cables for the power supply are going to be basically in view. So keeping this thing cable managed is going to be maybe a bit of a challenge, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, let's look inside this box, see what we get. I suspect it's probably just screws. Oh no, it's more cable ties. Oh wow. We'll call them cable ties because I think that's probably what they actually are. And inside the box there is just some screws. So you've got a small pack of spare screws and a spare standoff. Good to see. Not much in the box, but it's actually quite good that you get, what was it, 4? Yeah, 4 of these, 4 in total, 4 cable ties and some screws. Not bad for a cheap case. Okay, let's talk about fan placement and the motherboard tray. Okay, this thing only supports 2 120mm fans. Now, I think potentially you could actually mount 3, but I don't know about that. But you can definitely mount one in the back. We've already talked about that. 120mm fan, exhaust fan, or potentially a 120 AIO. That's also an option there, depending on what you're putting in it. If 120 is going to be enough to cool whatever you're cooling, but you probably will want to just do air cooling in this case. I don't think it's necessarily big enough for water cooling. And then on the front, you've got a 120mm space there with a, I think it's a dust filter. It doesn't look to me like this front panel. Oh no, it is removable. I can see that's potentially removable. We'll try and pull that off in a minute. But you've got space here for a 120mm fan, and yeah, you've got 2 spaces. Now, at the bottom of the case, I think you could potentially mount another, maybe 2 fans if you're not using the 3.5-inch hard drive tray here. I reckon you could probably mount another 2 120mm intake fans at the bottom. I got a feeling, let's just actually test that theory and bring in one of these fans and just see if the holes line up. I suspect it probably does. Yeah. So I reckon you could potentially mount a fan in whichever orientation that you decide to do it. Given that there's only a very limited amount of space underneath the case, you would probably want that as an intake fan. You can actually mount it both ways round. I was a bit worried that it was so low it's going to touch anything on the actual case, but looking at that, it looks like that would actually fit either way, whether you want that intake or outtake. I would probably go, as I just said, intake for that, so it pulls air in from the bottom and then potentially cools your GPU. But that's the other thing that you need to be aware of, is the size of your GPU, of course. Is there going to be enough room? Hard drive space in this case is going to be a premium. There isn't a lot of space in this for 3.5-inch hard drives. But as you can see here, this is the only available 3.5-inch drive slot, or caddy, as you will, if you will, that is available. Now, I'm not sure whether Ionz will do extra caddies, so maybe you can put another one there if you wanted to. But there is definitely screw holes there for something like that. Potentially this is mounted to where the fans screw into, although actually looking at this, it probably isn't. I don't know for sure. We can check that by looking under the case in a moment. But it might be that you can put another one there. I don't know. If I find out, I'll put that in the bottom of the video right now, so you can get another one if you want to. We'll find that out a little bit later on. You've got all the cables up here for the front I/O. There is quite a lot. And as I said earlier, mounting or sorting your cable management with the ATX power supply in here is going to be a bit of a challenge, but there is quite a lot of space behind the power supply, so you could potentially cram it all behind. Now, the only issue is, depending on which power supply you're going for, depends on what that is going to look like. Power supply choice is going to be another thing that you need to factor into your experience as well, because the power supply is going to be absolutely visible from the side panel. Now, you may not care what the power supply looks like. Some of them are odd colors, but you might want to match the power supply to the case color. Now, going to case color, they do actually do white and black. So you do have that option to choose a black case if you've got a black power supply, or you're picking a black power supply, for example. Okay, so moving on to the motherboard standoffs, you can see they are pre-inserted. You can't actually remove these. They are kind of there, and you can't take them out, which is actually good, because then you can't lose them. So that's not an issue. You've got the 4 there for the standard mini ITX size motherboards, and then you've got the extra ones at the bottom here for micro ATX. And you've even got some wider ones. If your motherboard is slightly wider, even some micro ATX ones are actually wider. It does actually support that if it's a really wide motherboard. One that we looked at from a pre-built Dell machine was actually wider than it was longer, and that would actually fit in a case like this, given that it's got the 6 screws there for that. Okay, so the last thing we need to look at is, does the front panel come off? Well, let's find out. Let's just pull it off, see how easy it is to pull off. Hey, that's not too bad. So there we go. That is the front panel off, just held on by these plastic little clips. And then you can see there, we've got this very fine mesh grille on the front, which should catch a lot of dust, but obviously there will be some dust that will get through. It is the nature of fans, unfortunately. So looking at the top of the front here, it looks like the actual PSU holder, or bracket, if you will, is actually removable. We can take that out. Now, I don't know whether you can mount a fan there. It doesn't look like the holes will line up, given that the fact that these are actually slightly wider than the fins here, than the holes here. We've got the space for the 120mm fan that we showed you earlier. No vent there at all, because obviously we've got the front panel grill there as working as a filter. So we've got that. So it might introduce a little bit of noise, but there is actually a bit of a gap here. So hopefully the noise isn't too much. because there's a tiny little bit, maybe centimetre gap there between that and the actual front of the case there. All right, so let's put this thing back together and I'll tell you how much this case costs. Okay, so moving on to how much does this thing actually cost? The one without fans in white or black is going to cost you $42.99. That's 42 Great British pounds. If you want this version in white or black with the fans, that's only going to take it up to $49.99. And I've also seen this on eBay, which is actually where I got this one from before I realized it was on Amazon, for the same price. Now I think for this type of case, that is a staggering amount of quality. It's just, normally cases of this cheapness are not that great. They're okay, but they're not amazing quality. This one has quality all over it, I feel, for something of this size. This case is destined for a build, and that is going to be coming up in an upcoming video, believe it or not. We've got most of the parts for this build, and it's going to be converted into a kind of sim rig. So get subscribed and like so you don't miss that. Why won't it scroll? No, it won't scroll. Is it not? I don't know what I'm doing.
That still doesn't look right.
What do you mean it doesn't look right? The holes line up, dude. Oh, there's a, okay. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so let's get this case out of the box. Now we have already taken it out because obviously we wanted to have a look at it. And here it is. This is a white. Start that again, it's stuck. I lost what I was going to say.